welcome everyone. If you don't know me already, my name is Cindy Wagman and I'm the president of the Good Partnership, and we exist to help small nonprofits with their fundraising so they can focus on the important work they're doing to change the world. So we've been doing this for a couple of years, and most of all, I think it's meaningful and fun. And we try to have fun with everything we do, which is why when I finally met Rickesh in person, because we've been emailing back and forth a bunch, I knew he had to kick off our year of Masterclasses because he is above anything else fun and smart and doing all the right things. So Rickesh, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Well, sure, but now you've set a bar so high, so we're going to aim not to disappoint today. Welcome everybody, and definitely agree with Cindy's mission around how can we really help those wonderful small organizations. And I always say small and mighty because I feel like small puts us in a box, and size does not necessarily represent your impact and your ability to do good. And we do have a certain set of parameters we're working under. I run an organization called Future Possibilities for Kids as the executive director, and have been fundraising for over a decade. Moving from a large shop to a small shop, definitely see some of the things that we actually get to do that some of the larger shops can't do. Often people say we're too small, and I actually see that that's an advantage. And that was really the origins of this particular workshop, was let's see not only what we can do, but how we can do it maybe better than others. So I'm very excited about today, and thanks for giving your time to be here with Cindy. And I have a lot of respect for you, Cindy, and what you're doing in this space. And I think I'm really excited about the work you're doing as well with working with folks like us to help us do more.
Awesome. So yes, to pretty much everything. I'm really excited to have you. And I totally agree. I think small is mighty in a lot of ways. And obviously we're going to hone in on fundraising, but if I can rant for a second, I also personally find that the smaller organizations are doing more innovative work. Generally, I know that's a generalization, but from what I've seen, you can be more nimble and innovative in more ways than the big shops, my experience in the big shops. So thank you all for your great work and for being here, because you're here to learn how to fundraise to do more great work or to improve your fundraising. So with that, we'll kick it off, because fundraising in a small shop does have some advantages. So do you want to talk to us about, well, I'll let you start where you want to start.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is to definitely celebrate, yes, all the great work that's going on. It's not just about fundraising. I think I'd love to get to know so many of these organizations. When I hear the names, I'm like, I wonder what you do. And I'm sure it's special and wonderful. And it's about how do we get that message out to our donors about how they're making a difference. And giving to our organization is just one of the ways that they can interact with us. It's definitely what we're focusing on today. We're going to talk today, though, it is about hyper-personalized stewardship. When I say hyper-personalized, it's that, you know, we're not just putting somebody's name on something. We're not just sort of giving them something that they might get anywhere else. That we're giving them something that really hits to their heart and makes them feel like they have a real connection to your organization. So I talk about something called like the 4 levels of stewardship. And, you know, the first one is kind of where it's just hygiene these days. Like if you're not doing it, then that's going to be a problem. If you're not putting if you're saying dear friend on an email, or you're not sending out the receipt letter, these are just things that have to be done. Level 2 is like you're doing a little bit and people maybe raise an eyebrow, but they're not gonna remember it. They're just gonna move on with their lives. And so that's not anything that's gonna really significantly influence their future behavior, which is what we're talking about. Level 3 is where you actually start to build that connection. You feel like they feel like they're likely to give more again. They feel like a closer connection to you. And that's where a lot of organizations may get to, which is great. But I always talk about level 4. And I can explain what it is, but you said I can show a video, right, Cindy? So I'm going to just do a quick screen share here. Yeah. And hopefully this works, because I want to show you what we're trying to do with our donors. So permit me to try to show this video here. So that's
Amazing.
really what we're what we're trying to do, and we're trying to blast people's minds. We're trying to give them something that they're like, I've never seen anything like this. I want to tell everyone I know about it. I want to put it on my fridge. I want to share it with other people. And that's it's like, it's one of a kind. It's handmade. They feel like you did this just for me. And I think I want to ask the group, it's like, if you were to think about your organization, and it's okay to be honest, like, and you can even put in the chat if that's okay, like, if you really be honest about where your organization is at from what I described, would you describe yourself on a level of scale of 1 to 4? Where would you say your organization is at? Put it in the chat and we can get an idea of where you feel you're at.
One is not so, or level 1 is bare minimum. I'm going to give you guys the option of doing 0 too, because I have worked with organizations where one of their biggest challenges is that they're really not even doing basic stuff. So you have the opportunity to be, you're starting from the baseline. Level 1, bare minimum. Level 2, basic. Level 3, it's starting to get there. It's getting noticed. Level 4, mind blown. All right, so we're having some 2s and 1s. 1, 0 so far. Thank you for your honesty. I know it's not easy, but it's true. One of the biggest challenges with some of our clients is that they're not so bad at getting donors, but they don't keep them because they don't thank them on time. They don't, they address them as friend. Like, those things we take for granted when we're, into this as a career, but a lot of organizations aren't there yet. Okay, Tanya, you're a 3-4, and Ken, that's great, guys. We're going to totally call on you to give some examples. So the 4s are going to be in the hot seats, and then the 0s will take it easy on you.
Oh, I like this interesting one. I don't know who that is. It's CXBYWJ,
yeah.
But 4 for major donors, 2 to 3 for other levels, and we could talk about that later in terms of segmenting donors. And I mean, that's an interesting thing, because we talked about it at the workshop that you saw, Cindy, and I think that people think that we have to do more for the people that give more. And I think what we're trying to say is, as a small shop, in theory, every donor should be able to get some type of level 4 service. It might not be the volume of activity you do for someone who's giving you $10,000, but every donor should get that feeling like they walk away from their experience with your charity feeling like that is very memorable, and I really feel like I want to not only give again, but tell others about it. That's really the level 4 component, right? Is sharing,
totally,
being an advocate for your organization.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Sorry, guys. What, Jasper? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. All right, so let's move on. Can we call some people out? If you rated yourself as number 4, just type in the chat some examples. We'll come back to it. We'll keep talking, but I really want to hear what people are doing that they're super proud of. And if you know that your work has led to a bigger, or to a future donation, or a repeat gift. So take a minute in the chat while we keep talking. So Rickesh, hyper personalized. Why is that the sort of foundation or the crux of what we're talking about?
Well, the thing is that, donors, they have an idea of what it takes to do certain things. And so if they think something is easy to do, then they're going to receive it that way. Not that they won't appreciate it. So what we're trying to do is increase the gap between how much time that they think something took you and how much time it actually took you, to be honest. So if you can do things that they're like, how could you possibly have done that for me and for all your donors? And meanwhile, you were able to find a nice, especially as a small shop, a nice efficient way to do it. That's the kind of thing we're talking about, and that's going to give you the advantage. So the reason that hyper-personalized is important, because I think if you have a base of 100,000 donors, it's going to be very hard to do it. But if you're like a lot of the smaller organizations and you have a base of even under a couple thousand, these are things that you can do with the support of volunteers, with some allocation of staff time, and knowing that it is going to also lead to better connections and also more gifts in the future. So when I say hyper-personalized, like I'm talking about, we're always challenging ourselves. Let's say we're going to do something. We're like, well, how can we take it even a step further? So I just want to maybe punctuate with a couple of examples to kind of maybe, show you what I mean. So I'm going to share my screen again, if I can do that. Mm-hmm. And so check out this one. And this was, you may even recognize this gentleman here. His name is John Lepp. And this was sent to him by an organization, and they were calling him a superhero. So they actually put his face onto a card and then showed him as a superhero. Now that's hyper personalized. It definitely took them some time, but that's something that he's going to go show everybody. He's going to put it on Twitter. He's going to put it on Facebook, and he's going to be very, very proud to be a donor of yours. And then when we look at this, can you guys see this envelope? Is that what you're seeing now?
Not yet, but
okay. Let me just go back here. And now I'm going to share something else. This envelope, so even on the outside, you know, we talk about the whole thing. We want to even personalize the outside envelope. This is like one of a kind, handmade, probably by a recipient of their services. And it's you're going to want to open that. You're going to be excited to open it. That's the vibe you're trying to create. When sometimes people get things from charitable organizations, to be honest, they're kind of dreading it in some ways. They're like, it's going to be something I've always seen. They're probably going to be asking me for money. Probably not going to get an idea of what my donation is doing. When you see something like this, you're like, wow, like I'm excited to open it and I want to interact more with you. I'll give you one more example here. I'll find it here. All right, so I'm having trouble finding it, but that's okay. We actually did something where we had some sponsors for an event, and what we did is we asked people at the event to sign a canvas with the sponsor's logo in the middle. We had to cover that up so they couldn't see what we're doing, and everybody during the event came by and wrote on the event what like the canvas, what that event meant for them, what they learned, how it's going to help them in the future. And then that was presented to the sponsors at the end of the event. And I can tell you it went over really, really well, because they were like, how did you possibly coordinate this during the event? And it was very meaningful for them. It's probably different than any of the usual stuff they're going to get. So this is what we're talking about. Like, if you guys can visualize this and picture every interaction with your donors being one where they look forward to it and they really feel like it's exciting to be part of your organization. They feel like part of your family. So that's why this hyper-personalized is so important, Cindy.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And it's true. These are things that don't take a lot of money, because we know that that's a big resource constraint. They don't even take a lot of time. I would say that's even a bigger resource constraint. And they're so meaningful. And because you're not like a big shop that's churning out like 6 appeals a year and this and that, like this gets noticed. And people, I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about this, how important it is to steward or thank or show your donors love, whatever terms you want to call it. And do you do thank you calls, any of you, in your organizations? So we do some thank you calls for clients. Just getting a phone call that's not an appeal, but it's a thank you, just like totally stands out. When I was, here, I'm going to give one example. Sorry, guys. When I was in a small organization, actually very early on in my career, I used to hand deliver tax receipts on my way home from work. And like, I would ring the doorbell, and these donors were used to getting so many appeals and like sales or like door-to-door canvassing, and just to say, hey, thank you, here you go. Totally. Are people seeing how that can work for you?
He wants to hear the good. He wants to hear what people have to say.
Yeah.
Cindy, I think that you're right about the phone. For me, the phone is one of the most underutilized tools in fundraising, because an email is easy to send, easy to delete, and mailing is good too, depending on what you're sending. But a personal phone call, when we ran a thank you call campaign, I mean, when I was at a larger shop, we implemented it. It wasn't easy to make that kind of change, but we were able to see a 10% increase in the donations the year after, just from the thank you calls. And not to mention the long-term, what that's going to do for our retention, because people were like, I gave $10. Why are you calling me? Not because they're upset, but they're like, you're calling me? And we're like, yes, you chose to give to us, and that was important to us. And if we have history on that person, if we know how long they've been giving, any information, why not throw that in there? Because that's, again, what we're talking about, where it's like, if they're not a new donor, then say, we appreciate your renewed gift. If they're a new donor, say, thank you for joining our donor, thank you for joining our team of donors and joining our family. And so the phone is very, very personal, and also you can also read and gauge how the person is interacting with you. So you can measure their affinity and say, you might find some champions. Sometimes I'm talking to people and they're like, yeah, actually, I've been a big supporter of yours, for many years, and I really love what you do. Well, maybe a week later I follow up and we go for coffee or something. You never know where those lead to, and it's another way of sort of doing some prospecting. So it's not just for the calls; it's also for getting a chance to talk to people. And you'd be surprised how many people want to have a conversation with you. Some of the calls take a minute, and a lot of people are just like, hey, you're calling me from this charity, back off, right? And they're like, no, I'm just calling to say thanks. And they're like, pause, waiting for the shoe to drop, and it doesn't. And then they're like, oh, wow, well, thank you. I appreciate the call. Maybe here's why I give. And it's quite a great tool to connect with your donors too. So totally, the phone, amazing.
Yeah. And we had, like Hannah mentioned, they have students do thank you calls. That's awesome. Volunteers, even other staff members. So for example, I don't know how many of you struggle with what we call culture of philanthropy. I know that's a big buzzword, but this is a really easy way to get your colleagues involved in fundraising in a way that feels good and feels like they're part of something successful. And it kind of breaks down those barriers between programming staff and fundraising staff. If you're a dedicated fundraising staff, or just as an executive director, you can really mobilize your team to feel good about having people give and support your organization. So I love examples. What about you guys? Want to see some more examples? Let's see. Give us some other. Can we talk about video?
Yeah. I had a video queued up. Let me just find that here.
Okay. Because this is so easy now. So easy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, video is very, very. People know that people are consuming video at a high rate, and if you have, and you send an email and there's a picture of something with a play button on it, and it looks like someone's about to talk to you, that gets such high level of engagement on email and in pictures and on your website, because people want to hear people talking. Pictures are wonderful. You have to have lots of great pictures, but when they know there's a video and it's going to be short and sweet. So let me show you one video here, which was all these are used with permission, by the way. This was a video that was done through an organization that's an international development organization, and you'll see how simple and easy and honestly low budget this video is. But tell me, if you were getting this video, how you got it.
Hello, Heather. I am here in Ethiopia, and I wish you were with me. But I'm just taking the time to say thank you so much. You give to us every month for the Millier Project, and we're seeing all the great things that are happening in the lives of families and children because of your support. So I just wanted to say thanks, Heather. I'll see you at the next board meeting.
Now, granted, it is for a board member, but they do this video for a lot of different people and for monthly donors. So you're acknowledging the type of gift. And this is another thing to think about, is what are the ways that you're doing personalization? And if you can, hit on more than one of these things at once, the person's going to be like, wow, you really get me. It's based on the relationship. Are they a monthly donor, a board member? Mention those things. Is it based on their interests? If you're an animal charity, then what is their favorite animal? Is it something else that they're passionate about? Is it social justice? What's the issue they're passionate about? If it's history, how long have they been giving to you? I mentioned this before. Are they a long-time donor? Are they a recovered donor? Are they a donor who used to give to you 5 years ago and now they've come back? Is it the nature of the gift? Do they give the gift in kind? Do they volunteer with you? Do they make some kind of connection for you? I send thank you cards to people who introduce me to somebody, even if they themselves gave nothing, because oftentimes these connections are great things. Is it based on a campaign? This one is actually one of the most important ones. Is if somebody gave to a specific campaign or initiative, it's very important to acknowledge that in there. If they say they gave specifically, like for us, to our summer camp program, then it'll be really important to acknowledge that the gift is going to the summer camp program and what that's going to do, rather than a very specific campaign. A lot of people are good at that, but then you don't do the specific stewardship on the back end, which is so important. And anything random you know about them. If you know they have children or pets or life events that are happening, factor all that kind of stuff in. So I wanted to show you that video because it was it had a hit on a few of those things all at once. And I can imagine when that was received, actually, I know who received it, she was very, very touched by it. And you saw it was like 15 seconds, and it probably took her just that long to make it and send it.
Yeah. Free. And free. It's so easy, guys.
And free. I don't know how much data costs in Ethiopia, but I'm sure they work something out too.
Yeah. So we have, fair enough. Suggestions on how to send videos. So depending on how long it is, well, I'll let you answer that, and then I'll weigh in if I have anything to add.
Oh, for me? Okay, sure. So in terms of how to send video, I mean, there's new tools that are coming out that definitely make it easier. One way to do it is to create a really low resolution video like that one and send it by email. Emails are now able to do that. You could upload them to YouTube, but then that requires a unique link for each one. There's a new tool I heard about, which I haven't used yet, but I'm keen to try it out. It's called BombBomb. So BOMB, and it allows you to stay in touch with, I mean, it's for any kind of business or organization, and you can send personalized videos, and it does some of that back-end work for you. Anything to make it easier for us, because to me, the idea of creating 100 videos and then emailing them out individually and creating links for all of them, I'll do it if I have to, but it's a lot of work. So there are other tools. I'm seeing some notes here. Some people are saying, yes, definitely. If you put it on YouTube as an unlisted video, so when someone goes to your channel, they can't see it. And then that way they can still get the link and still share it with other people. I see a note there that sometimes attachments do go to junk mail. And you're right, that is something you might contend with. And there's no sort of perfect method. I think that you're going to see a lot of new technologies coming out. But BombBomb is one that I saw that I'm excited about. And it's not really, really expensive in terms of sending those videos out.
Yeah. And definitely, like, if you're doing YouTube ones, those links shouldn't alone result in spam. Just like send it as a personal email. So make sure you're not sending these through like MailChimp or anything like that. And you probably wouldn't, because they're so personalized anyway. But if it's coming from your inbox, if they get your emails regularly, this should not change that. If they don't get your emails, if they're generally tagged as promotion or something, then it'll probably go where the rest of them go. But YouTube in a larger organization requires transcribing. What? Can you, Hannah, while we're talking, just explain that, because I don't know. I don't know what that means. Okay.
Look at that example that just came up.
Yeah, so Jocelyn says, for Christmas, we give our volunteers and community council members Christmas balls made with handprints from the children in our playroom, decorated into snowmen, and a Christmas card that was signed with a personal message from any of the staff that work closely with that volunteer or community council member.
Wow.
That is amazing. Jocelyn?
Yeah.
Way to go. Blown, right? Like, the part that stands out to me is that you had it signed by the people you know they had a personal relationship with, not just like the generic executive director. I find that, going back to what I said about the phone calls and involving staff, like, it's meaningful to the staff and to the volunteers. So that's really cool. Without a full, okay.
Oh, right. Sorry, they're talking about the Accessibility Act in terms of video. I mean, the good thing is, like, you can use something called Windows Movie Maker, and depending how long the movie is, you can transcribe it and add subtitles and things like that very quickly. But you're right. You definitely want to be complying with all the legal aspects of what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So always be aware of what that looks like. But there are tools coming out that will make it easier for sure.
Totally. And I've tried Google YouTube's transcribing service, or like, I think it's just a bot that transcribes for you, and it seems to work relatively well. And that was kind of like, it just does that automatically. So that could be something you can experiment with. I'm not saying it's going to totally solve all your problems, but worth a look. So yeah. I think this, in one of the settings, I can't remember where, but it lets you transcribe.
So I want to go back to something that Hannah actually said, which was great, which is, she said, this is where being small can help. And, we're talking about why being small actually makes you stronger, because your theory, you're saying, well, anyone can do what we're talking about here. But here's the thing that, the four things that I think are important for small shops in terms of why we could do some of these things better. First of all, a smaller donor base to work with. So our donors, we've been getting a lot more donors in the last few years, but it's still a small enough number that I can personally call each and every one of them. And there's no reason not to. If I don't have a phone number, that I don't do that. And if not, then they get a personal email, and there's a bit of some of the text that's kind of copied. But at the beginning, I'll make sure that it's personalized to who they are, and it's coming from my outlet. Again, make sure you're complying with all of the rules around CASL and all that for those in Canada, or in any anti-spam legislation. Make sure that you have options to opt out of your emails and things like that. But I find for the most part, people aren't upset with getting emails that are like the fun stewardship stuff. Usually, they seem to opt out more when you're asking for something. But if they get 5, 6, 7 communications from you, where you're not asking them for anything except to watch a video or feel good about themselves, I find that they're less likely to then unsubscribe or tell you to stop sending solicitations. So there's this notion of donor fatigue. I don't believe that it exists. I believe that people are just tired of getting asked so much and getting nothing in return. And we're talking about transferring value. Fundraising is about giving something of value in return, which is a story of feeling good, knowing you've made a difference. So I think with having that small donor base, every single donor to me should be able to get something really personalized, everything hand signed, that kind of thing. We're definitely nimble because, I remember we were talking about something in our organization, and the time we talked about it, so we recruit volunteers for kids in our program. We match them up, and the volunteers help kids accomplish goals to make their community better. So we were doing a volunteer recruitment campaign, and we said, what if we did like that Uncle Sam, the Army, We Want You campaign? And so what have the kids doing and say, we want you to be our kid coach. So from the time we had that conversation to the time that this campaign was front and center on our website was a week and a half. And, try doing that in a larger organization. So we're nimble, and we can get things to market very, very quickly. And honestly, there's less hoops to jump through. We're also very resourceful. I mean, think about what it takes every single day to sustain an organization. And we have issues with sustainability and maybe hiccups in our operations, but it's even more magnified sometimes in a smaller shop because there's less people and less resources to deal with it. So you have to find harder ways to make it work. But when it comes to this type of thing, that works in your favor because you're very resourceful. My team has come up with so many things that have cost virtually nothing that I'm like, where did you even come up with this? So that's another thing, is take this to your team because they are very creative. The fourth piece is that smaller gifts mean more to your budget because if someone gives $1,000 to a larger organization, it's not that it's not going to be appreciated. It will be. But if someone gives we're a $400,000 Canadian organization. If someone gives us $1,000 gift, they are basically a major donor at that point. And they're going to get all kinds of love. And if someone gives us $10,000, they're going to get a ticker tape parade. So it's just, those smaller gifts mean more and get celebrated more. And that's going to differentiate people's experience with you because they'll feel, wow, I get so much my gift. I get so much.
Poor guys. I wanted to, and got interrupted, ask you about two things, or give one example and then ask you about something, because I have a really great example of that where someone, well, it's more that you don't know how you treat people as donors at every level. So, $1,000 is a major donor. And one of the things that I'm always so intrigued by is how we really don't know about people's capacity. And I had a staff member at one of my previous jobs. She got a call from a donor who gave $500, wasn't happy with how they were recognized. I think they missed the cutoff date for the annual report. She treated him so well, and they built a relationship. I think he was in the States. He's a Canadian expat. She sent him it was around Canadian Olympics, and she sent him the Canadian Olympic gloves or whatever, mitts, just as a thank you. Built a relationship. He ended up giving $250,000. Just would have gone otherwise completely under the radar, right? No one in the big organization is paying attention to those gifts.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think that without getting to know your donors, and that's why things like calling your donors, figuring out what's going on in their life, these are things that can tip you off as if someone has a capacity to give much more. And, they might not even think to be giving that much more to charity. But if you look at a lot of planned gifts, that they're coming from donors that are giving $25 a month, that on a scale of just the amount of gift, they may never get on your radar. Meanwhile, they're ready to leave 10, 50, $100,000 legacy gift to your organization. So I think we have to be very conscious of that. And that's why we do have to prioritize our time. We can't do everything for every person. However, I still feel like a level 4 experience is still possible for every donor, and it'll be relative to their gift. So if someone giving $25 probably would think you're nuts if you sent them all kinds of stuff. They might be like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. But relative to their gift level and what they might expect, you can definitely meet those expectations. So it's not going to, level 4 doesn't look the same for every donor, but then that's how you can keep those people on your radar, and who knows what happens down the road, as you said. I love that story.
Totally. So my other question was going to be, so you mentioned you work with your staff on this, and
Yes.
they come up with a lot of ideas. And
Yes.
I would love for you to talk a little bit about that process and how you empower them or encourage them to bring creative ideas forward, because often we're so stuck in the hubbub of every day that it's hard to think about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing with being in a small shop, and we can get into that more later if you like, is terms of like the budgeting and the resources and selling this to others in your organization. Because I'm fortunate to be the executive director in my current organization, but in my last role I was the fundraising lead, and I had to sell these ideas to my colleagues, because some of the things, especially when we wanted to have full staff doing thank you calls, I had to have some conversations. I think in terms of the staff, I think the first thing is, we talked about that culture of philanthropy, is getting everybody to understand the importance of donors to the organization. That these are not just people giving money, these are people that make our work possible. Everyone really needs to understand that. At the same time, never, ever, and this is a big pet peeve of mine, because I do hear people still saying this, never ever go to like a program staff member, if you're a fundraiser, and say, well, we pay your salaries. Think about how that people still say that stuff. I hear them say, well,
Wow.
how come people don't get it? It's like, no, we're supposed to be relationship builders and engaging people. That's just going to put people's backs up. So it's about letting people know the importance of donors to the organization, and how this can be another outlet for them to do things that, maybe their regular job is kind of like pretty predictable. This is a chance for them to really try something a little bit new and interesting. And then here's the thing, you actually then have to use those ideas. I mean, not every single one, but if you're going in, you're not just doing it to humor the staff, you're doing it going with open mind and saying, hey, if you have an idea, let's try it. The good thing, again, about being small is that when we quote unquote fail, we fail on a smaller stage. So if we try something out and it doesn't work as well, that's okay, because maybe not as many people see it. And in the end, we've taken a risk, we've tried something new. So I think for the staff, just letting them know it's a safe environment, not judging ideas, right? And that's another thing with the creative process. When someone brings an idea forward, don't say, oh, that won't work, or that's terrible, because then they'll get shut down. But I do find that, and look, some staff are maybe more conducive to this than others. I have one staff member who's very process-driven, and we're a team of 4, okay? So she's the one that does things like tax receipts and letters of acknowledgement. I have another one who is a program staff, but she's very, very creative. And our board chair is, after stepping down after 4 years, not from the board, but in the chair role. And so we were brainstorming together, and we came up with the idea of giving them a tiny little chair on a little stand, and we're going to make a little plaque, and we're going to come up with all kinds of cheesy dad joke, which I'm good at, puns, about what a chair. What I wanted to do was, you didn't sit on your butt for 4 years, but we might change it. So it's just, and then that was her idea. We came up with it together, or she came up with it, and then just giving it a go. And I think oftentimes your staff can come up with, your team come up with better ideas than you can. It's because they're living close to it too. Like, this is the person who works with the kids in the program. So when I say, can we, do you think we can get some videos of some of the kids saying thanks to some of our donors? She's like, absolutely, I'm all over it, because I'm seeing them next week, and they'll be excited about the chance to do something different too.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts and questions. One is, so, I mean, controversially, a lot of organizations really encourage their staff to give as well. I've been in an organization where that's always been a priority. I know United Way, member organizations used to have to do that in a big way. But even if your staff aren't donors, but are integral to this stewardship, in some ways, that is a really important and foundational contribution. Not in some ways, it is. And so how can you also recognize them? Or do you have any, or does anyone have any examples of how you can recognize staff for their involvement in this?
Yeah, I'd love to hear some examples from the group. I mean, and kind of the way we run our organization, one of our core values is the idea of acknowledgement. So we're always acknowledging things that people are doing. So whether it's something to do with fundraising or something else, and I always find kind of interesting ways to even recognize my staff. A couple of years ago, I bought, we had made some wine, you know, those do-it-yourself wine things, and got like 20, 30 bottles, very tasty stuff. And what I did was I created customized wine labels for each staff member that were personalized to them about something they like. So one person really likes Mark Wahlberg. So I made a wine that was called Wahlberg wine with his face on it. And then it's basically, because they do everything. They make burgers, they're in movies, right? They're in TV shows. So then it said Wahlberg wine, why not? And on the back, instead of ingredients, it had a list, like it was an acknowledgement of some of the skills and things that she does well. So I did that for each staff member. So in there, if the person was involved in some of that, then definitely would be acknowledged. Hey, you helped to craft this campaign or run this initiative towards fundraising, you know, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think it's so important to recognize your staff in that way. And it's the same principles, right? It's the same. It's personal. It's meaningful. It's recognizing them as opposed to just sort of throw it out there and, you know, hope that it sticks. Okay, I had another question, but I lost it. I'm going to just look at the chat. So Joanne was asking, do other small shops still use conventional print newsletters? And maybe we can talk for a minute about print versus digital in all of these areas. What's your, I mean, obviously we've talked a little bit about both. Are there mediums that you think are, or are there things that are more appropriate digital versus print?
Yeah, I'm a big handwritten note and physical mail kind of guy, unless the donor says they don't want that anymore. Because, you know, this other thing is to look at the evolution of how people see stewardship. And a long time ago, they would have seen, you know, letters in the mail, and you know, in the days of the typewriter, even in the days of typewriter, getting a letter was a big deal. Think about how hard it was. But then letters became so popular that now people don't care anymore. But then now with email, it's back. You know, letters are having no one gets mail anymore. I'm talking to people below 20 years of age, and they honestly, and it's not a critical thing, is they just never do it. They don't know how to actually mail a letter. We had a volunteer in our office, and I was like, "Oh, can you just mail this letter?" And they're like, "What do you mean? What do I do?" So, oh wow, like here's where the address goes, here's where the stamp goes, here's where the return address goes, and I understood because they'd never done it before. So if you're, I would say that print to me is something that they say is dying, but when something is being done less and less, it helps you stand out even more. So I think that print is always going to have an effect that nothing else can. I think email is really, really difficult to cut through. If you're lucky, you get 20, 30% open rates on an email list and 1, 2, 3% click rates. You know, that's not how you're going to raise a lot of money, but it's going to reinforce your message. I think personal emails, when it's coming from, like, let's say myself, we just got an announcement of something really cool. So I sent a personal email to a bunch of people who deserve to hear it. And that kind of thing, it's very, very appropriate. But I also think, again, as I said, phone calls. Phone is one of those things where if something cool happens in your organization, just try this out. Call 10 people, your 10 closest friends in the organization. Just call them instead of sending them the email and see how they react to it. So it's hard for me to say, because I think you really have to know your donors. You have to know what works well. There are industry proven, you know, metrics and benchmarks, but try them out in your shop, see what works, test everything. Especially in a smaller organization, you might think testing takes time, but the reality is it's going to save you time because we did this thing and it really didn't work. So I think that's going to be another way you'll see what works well. So pick half your donors and send them a letter to renew their gift, and pick the other half and do a phone call and see which one works better, or pick both, or do both with them. So I think the main thing is just knowing your audience and knowing what you have the capacity to do. Perhaps your organization is better suited to do one type than the other. In terms of, like, maybe if you have phone calls, you know, in our organization, we were debating the idea of having a bunch of kids come in on volunteer time, past kids from our program who are looking for those volunteer hours, and them helping to do the thankathon. as someone asked earlier, what's a thankathon? It's basically just everyone gets together and thanks a bunch of people through some kind of channel. And that kind of idea is conducive for us. But maybe if you're working in certain situations, if you're running, a men's shelter or something like that, maybe that's not possible. So then maybe something in print is better. So, I mean, the question of do you send newsletters or not? I definitely think you have to find a regular and consistent way to keep your donor engaged in an exciting way. So if you feel that that's your newsletter through any kind of channel, whether it's email or letter, then do it. I do know that some people kind of are tired of the way that things have looked, like those annual reports that are, here's the financials, message from the CEO, and here's a bunch of things of why we're so awesome. I don't think people want that anymore, or maybe they never did.
And I was going to say, like, find ways to infuse this hyper-personalization or just creativity into the newsletters. I agree. I think most people are not so interested in reading those long documents, and no offense to our sector, but a lot of the time we're not that good at writing them. So what do people want to see? Maybe instead of like a 4 or 8 page newsletter, you're sending a 1-page story update, and on the envelope, like you guys saw that envelope Rickesh showed at the beginning, like do that on the outer so that all of a sudden you have something that you can mass produce and send across the board, and maybe you even print a label, but get people to decorate the envelopes or, write thank you, or I love what it said about the message from the heart. Like those are ways that you can take something that you are doing for a large group of people and either make it really personal for everyone or just pick a handful, like segment your list and pick people it's really important to steward in that way and do that for them. I had another point about, you mentioned sort of picking up the phone and updating people when you have something exciting. And I did that recently with our fundraising volunteers. So, and often you forget, like you want, and this is true of and staff too, you want them to feel part of your fundraising success. And so anytime you're getting someone to work on behalf of you in terms of fundraising, programming staff, volunteers, board members, whatever, if you have a win, share it. Like shout it out from the rooftops and make them feel like the star because they were involved in that. Even if they weren't directly involved, they're supporting that work. So yeah, I picked up the phone and sent personal emails when we got a really big, exciting donation for a campaign I'm working on. And it's like, it wasn't fancy, it wasn't designed, it wasn't beautiful or anything like that. It was just like, hey, you're part of this and this is a huge win. So thank you.
Yeah. I like what you said about like basically let them know what their role was in that. We talk about this is a basic thing, but we use a lot of I and us versus you. And I think that's what we're talking about here is that the story has to be focused on their role in it. So that's very important to highlight that. And I look actually on the notes here, someone did say in terms of the newsletter, there's a way to do that. Even though the newsletter is focused on the achievements of the organization and what donors make possible, if you send it with a handwritten note, I think anything that goes out, that's the kind of thing that makes sense. If you're creating an annual report or any newsletter, don't just, okay, so look, I just got holiday cards recently, and I send a lot of holiday cards out. And I get the ones that are a picture of someone's family and says, happy holidays from this family. And I open it up and I'm like, okay, cool. The kids look cute. Great. And, then that's probably where it ends. And then I compare that to someone who sends me a Christmas card or a holiday card and it's written, they wrote something in there. It's a personal message. They're like, hey, remember this that happened, or this is why, you're important in my life, or whatever the case. That's how I try to write my things. That's one that I'm probably going to keep. So it's not to say I didn't appreciate the effort of the first one, but I'm comparing that to the newsletter where, okay, I got it. I'll read it, maybe not. And then it's going to go in recycling. But then the other one where it's like a newsletter, but then it's like a handwritten note from you saying, I really am excited to share this with you, Jim, or Karen, about what you've made possible. And I'm so excited to share this with you. And please read more in our newsletter and looking forward to seeing you at XY event. They're going to, not only are they going to be receive that better, they're probably going to be more likely to actually read the newsletter, which is kind of what you want, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, point them to a page or article you think that would resonate with them. So say, hey, even if you're doing it to this pointing everyone to the same article. Say, I thought, as long as it's authentic and true that you believe that they would really appreciate that article, say, check out this article on page 5. I think that's, you know, we were able to do that because of your support, or I know you're really interested in this type of work or something like that. Then they're going to open it for sure. So, yeah. All right. We've got 15 minutes left. And I want to make sure people can ask questions, although I know all of you have been really engaged in the chat. But for those of you who are a little shy with the chat, now is the time if you want to throw some questions in that we can answer. And while we wait, because I always forget it takes people time to always type, do you want to share one more example with us? Do you have?
Yes, I have a couple of examples here. Okay, so I've got 2, if that's all right here. This one is from our organization. So we actually did letters, and again, this was related to the campaign. The fundraising campaign said, you know, we want you to help break barriers for kids that can't to access programming in their communities. So whether the barrier is transportation or cost or whatever the case would be. And then the follow-up letter, which has the person's name on it, and at the bottom a handwritten note from me, which is every single one. And look, this time there was about 1,000 of these letters. I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of work. And then in this case, because this was a board member, we also attached this thing on the top right, you can see there, which is like this road sign that the kids in the program made as part of their goal. That's one of a kind. No one else is gonna have that. So needless to say, when she gets this, she's gonna be very, very excited, I'm hoping, anyways, to receive it. And it was more work, but I believe well worth it. And I'll show you one other example, and then you can see what, let's see here if I can find. Okay, so this is how we send our holiday cards. Anyone who's a donor, this is last year, so we changed it up a little bit this year, and we have those spaces there where we can write in any name that we want. And just doing that, again, the person's like, wow, like that's so special, like these kids are holding up my name. So again, you may not have worked with kids, which does make some of this a little bit easier, I'm not gonna lie, but you can find creative ways to do things like this that will make people feel special.
Yeah, I love that. And I never would have thought to just have a picture with those blank things where you can write it in. I would have done like 10 million pictures with different letters. So there you go. Very cool. All right, there's not a lot of questions. I mean, I think people have been pretty engaged, and I think your examples really speak to themselves. Anything you really want to leave people with as they take some of this information back to their desks in their busy days?
Yes, absolutely. I think that one thing, whenever we do things like workshops, webinars, you and I, as I'm speaking about us, it's a lot on the line here, we haven't done our job if people aren't going away and actually making a change. We're talking about changing behavior, changing mindsets, changing the way that we actually do things. If you feel good and you have a nice feel-good hour with us, that's great, but then you go back and you hit the reality of your world, which is really what does happen. So I would like if everybody, and if you'd like, you could type it into the chat. That would be really cool, because then we're all going to see it, type in one thing that you're going to do to create a more personalized donor experience over the next month or even a couple of months. Just type it in or write it down yourself so that you've made that commitment. But I think I do want to talk about when you take this back to your organization, because oftentimes I hear, well, look, I'm on board, but what do I do about my boss or my colleagues or my staff and my budget, my finance CFO or well, if you're a small shop, you don't have a CFO, it's your ED juggling that between their other jobs or the treasurer. But I think that the few things I want to share on that front. One is this doesn't have to cost much. We talked about it being close to free. And when you're trying to share this with somebody, we sent out 1,000 holiday cards over the Christmas break, and most of that was the postage in terms of the cost. It was about $850 in postage. The actual cost of printing was very low. And if I can go to our board of directors and say, we have people that are giving at least $25 or more to our organization, and it costs less than $1 to get a highly personalized contact point to their door, they're going to be like, that's no-brainer. That makes a lot of sense. I think the other thing is to make sure to tie it into what you're already doing, like piggybacking. I think a lot of people think we have to create a whole new event or create a whole new thing. Think about something you're already doing and find a way to add stewardship to it. If you're sending out, program updates, then add some kind of celebration of a donor story or some other story of what's going on in your program. Piggybacking is a very powerful tool, but I'm a vegetarian actually, so I actually call it celery backing. I hope that's okay. But piggybacking is definitely a good thing to do. I think also looking at when investment in this doesn't just increase retention rate in year one. I know one of the concerns people have is how do we keep our retention rate up? Well, doing these types of things consistently will definitely increase your retention rate, but it also has a long-term effect. If you can raise, if you increase your retention rate by 10%, then over 5 years, you'll raise 20% more from that same group of people. So that is a big, big deal. That's a lot of money just by doing some of these things. And the other thing is that research shows that sometimes when people give, if they're giving between 3 and 7 years of continuous giving, it means that they're probably going to stay with you for a long time. So again, if you can increase retention, you're more likely to be able to easily retain donors into the future. And then, of course, it opens up this stage for things like major gifts, conversion to monthly, joining your board, some things that probably won't happen with just a one-time gift. And the other thing you can do is, collect the stories from the donors themselves about how they feel about their experience. If you're trying to sell this with management and they're like, well, of course, you're going to say we need to invest in this, you're in fundraising. But if you actually have donors saying, this is my experience of your organization, I can't imagine very many CEOs or EDs or whoever your boss is that wants that type of experience if it's negative. But I mean, show good ones too. If it's coming straight from the donor's mouth, it can be very, very powerful. They're like, I just don't feel appreciated as a donor. That's going to be hard to ignore. The other piece is measure everything, because as we said, that's going to be important for you to keep your focus. Look, the thing is, you shouldn't have to make a case for stewardship. We know it works. It's like, that hugging somebody makes them feel good, but sometimes you have to do that. So that's what I want to leave you with is do take this back, make the case for it. And if you want to reach out and contact me, I'm sure Cindy would help with this too. I'm happy to help you in terms of crafting that, because that's the piece that you could totally get stuck on if you don't have a game plan.
Yeah, totally. And start with one thing. And like, I've talked to very many donors over the course of my career, and mostly listened to, I should say, instead of talked to. And everyone always says, oh, I don't want recognition, but I really liked it when you did this. Or that was really meaningful. Or I feel really close to the organization when you remember my name, or when you address it to me personally, or when you pick up the phone and call me. And so these things are so memorable and meaningful. And I also think they're fun. They're like, we all get bogged down in whatever running an organization looks like. And it's not always fun, as much as we try make it so all the time. But these are things that that kind of lift your own day, which is kind of really important when you are in a sector that burns out really quickly. So just really quickly, okay. So we've had a bunch of people tell us what they're going to do. For those who are a little shy in the chat, just say yes if you're going to try video. Let me know if you're going to try video. I'm curious to see what's the one thing you're, bomb. I love that. All right, what about those really fancy looking, but really personalized envelopes? They're like or cards, or something that's really like drawn, really personal. Awesome. All right, great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. As the blank name photo, yes, I love that. Cards, yeah, there's so much. Rickesh, thank you from all of us. That was fun. Did you guys have fun too? Did you have fun, Jasper?
My pleasure.
And thank you for your patience with this little guy. For those of you this is your first time joining us, this has never happened before, so I apologize, but he's particularly clingy today and not usually home with me. So yeah, thank you everyone. Have a great day. Go back to your desk and try something new and fun with this. All right? You say goodbye?
My pleasure. Take care, guys.
Bye.